Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our first birthday celebrations for Ghouls Magazine. So, I'm here today with some of my favourite creators of horror. Everyone is very, very inspiring women in horror here with me today. And I'm not going to lie, I'm slightly fangirling a bit because these are people here with me who have personally inspired me in the community, and I see as people that are, staples within the industry. So I'm very excited to be chatting to everyone. So I don't want to take up too much time nattering away. I want to hand over the conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and just ask everyone to introduce themselves, what you do, and then we will get into our conversation. So Danny, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, I'm Danny Thompson and I'm an actress and I do mainly horror.
Mainly horror, but I know you do other stuff
I
as
do
well.
other stuff, but mainly horror.
What about yourself, Billy?
Again, Zoe, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Billy or Billie Jean, whatever floats your boat, and I run Video Nasty Presents. It's a horror and kind of genre color palette Instagram, but it's kind of developed into a bit more with the community, so that's kind of my shtick.
Thank you, Billy. How about you, Janine?
Hi, I'm Janine Pipe. I'm a writer and an editor, and I also write for a scripted podcast. And it's the publisher that I work with is a women-led one, so we do women-only anthologies.
Which I have just received in the post today, which I don't have to hand to show, but I will later.
Awesome.
Alex, what about you? I think you're stuck on me.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm Alex West, author and writer and co-host of the Faculty of Horror podcast.
Thank you very much, Alex. And yourself, Mo?
Hi, I am a screenwriter, an author, a lecturer, and I'm also one of the co-producers of Nyx Horror Collective's 13 Minutes of Horror Film Fest. And we just opened our submissions last Sunday, so we're ready for our second year, which is really exciting because Shudder is one of our partners, and it's amazing to have them back again.
Amazing. And Ash?
Hello, I am Ash Millman. I am a writer and presenter. I started up a What Culture Horror, and then I work for PlayStation Access. So anything video games, horror, all that sort of thing is my interest. I'm very nervous and excited to be here. Thank you, Zoe.
I think we're all nervous. And Kate, saying that your mic and everything is working now. If yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You're
Okay,
trying to get quiet, so you might have to.
I am Kay Lynch of the Salem Horror Fest.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm very excited. So the reason that I invited you all here today is, of course, you are all creators of horror in many different mediums across many different industries. So I think for me, my first kind of question to you all is what was the first thing you created when it came to not necessarily horror? It could be something that's connected to your kind of journey into horror, but how did you first start creating, and what was it that inspired you to start, whatever your medium is? And please do plug away. Kay, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Okay, so 2013, I believe it was, I created a midnight rock horror show based around this character called Scary Mary, where I got some local musicians together from different bands, and we wrote some original music and programmed like 4 or 5 shorts with like a theatrical wraparound live concert in Salem, and we did that for a few weeks. It was really fun. The whole thing, it was called Scary Mary and the Audio Corset, and it was about this high school student who was bullied and the victim of a prank gone wrong that resulted in her soul getting trapped inside of an audio cassette tape that was lost over time. So this show was the resurrection of her, and she did a live concert for everyone in Salem.
That sounds amazing. I love that. That sounds like when I was younger, I wrote a poem about a girl that got stuck in a well. Didn't go too down too well at school. And then what kind of led you into your route into Salem Horror Festival?
I've lived here for about, I don't know, 15 years or so. I went to Salem State University, and I've always been really into horror, Halloween, and my background was events and marketing. I produced some theatrical shows while I was in school, and just always thought it was weird that there wasn't already a horror fest in Salem. So I was like, all right. In 2016, I was really sick of my full-time job, and I quit and started the festival.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it does seem that Salem didn't have a horror film festival. It's kind of the one place you would expect it.
Yes.
And what about yourself, Danny? I know that you've done a lot of different things and you cover loads of things. So I'd love to hear kind of like how you first got into creating.
Okay, so well, before I was acting, before I went to drama school, I was actually a glamour model, and I hadn't even really thought about acting. And I had this idea for a film, like what if there was like a cam girl show and a serial killer, and I pieced little bits together, little ideas, and then it was kind of after I went to drama school and I learned to write, I actually finished that script, and I actually did manage to get it made to well, I mean, I got the funding and I got the movie made. It wasn't quite my original script. With investors come their own ideas, and sometimes to get something done you have to compromise. But that was that. So yeah, straight from acting I went straight into kind of creating and producing as well with that film. So it was called Serial Caller, and I'm kind of proud of it because, you know, I got it out there, but at the same time I quite like to remake my own movie my way.
I think you should remake it your way if you want to do that. But I think just the fact that, you know, you went out there and made something is so phenomenal. I think so many of us often, you know, are put off of taking that first step. So, and you know, not all of us can say we've made a movie. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, it was part luck really, but also like determination, I think, to get that one out there.
Yeah. And Billy, what about you? Because I love what you're doing on Instagram with everything. So tell us a bit about what you first kind of like created.
Thank you so much. My internet's been a bit patchy, so give me a nod if I kind of cut in and out. But yeah, Video Nasty kind of kicking off as a weird one. Like, I'm a graphic designer in my day job. And at the start of lockdown, I was kind of bored shits, and I didn't know what to do with myself because I was out of work, because at the time I was working in a hotel and everything was closed down. And I had actually originally started, because for someone who was a graphic designer, I was actually like really bad with colors. I was like really bad. They just didn't make any sense to me. Like should I say, like, I kind of overthought about them too much that they didn't make any sense. So one day I was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the best movies ever made, and I was looking at the ending sequence with Leatherface's chainsaw dance, and it made me really angry that like so many people hate it just out of the principle that it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they kind of poo-poo it as like, you know, oh, grindhouse, you know, low budget slasher, terrible, ugly, awful. And I was going, how could you look at this movie and think it's ugly or awful? Like everything about it, like every frame of it is so beautiful. So I used the ending sequence of his dance as my first kind of palette inspiration, and seemed to like it when I posted it on my personal Instagram. So I made a proper kind of designated like Instagram for it, just kind of showcase it. And it took off, luckily. People seem to really like it. I was delighted because I thought, you know, silly kind of projects, people seem to like them. Like, so yeah, it kind of grew legs of its own over the last 2 years, and I've kind of branched it out into other things. So I launched a website, and I was hoping to kind of get it as a more collaborative platform that to kind of go past our palettes, I suppose. But that's still kind of in its infancy, and trying to work out the kinks and that. But that's kind of how it kicked off. It's all to do with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, pretty much.
Well, what a better film, because I'm sure we can all here say that we love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is a classic, and yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing with colors. I'm like pretty much have no color knowledge either. So I love looking at video nasty because I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can see the colors now. And what about you, Janine? I know you're doing lots and lots of creating at the moment, but what was kind of the first thing for you?
I'd got into creating by one of my other passions in life, which is Disney. And I had been writing for a ticket company based in the UK about traveling across the Disney world. So I had that kind of like experience of blogging and writing and all that kind of stuff. And I was enjoying doing it. But my main passion to be creative, especially fiction wise, is horror. And I had just lost my job. This was back in 2019. And I suddenly had some free time on my hand. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I will just try and write something, because I'd always enjoyed English and writing all through school and university. And then life kind of took over. And I was a police officer, so I didn't have any spare time whatsoever. But all of a sudden I had some spare time, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to just start writing and see what happens. And I went down the route that a lot of people do. I kind of started a blog and started just putting some stuff on there, and then finding different websites and people that would accept like drabbles, which is like 100-word horror and things like that, just to get your foot in the door and get a bit of experience. And then I have to say it blew up from there. I was just very, very lucky. Networking's been something that I'm quite good at. And so I'm not afraid to kind of put myself out there and approach people and say, oh, hi, I'd love to interview you and speak to you about such and such. And it's all gone on from there. So I've now got my own work published. I work with a press where we put stuff out. And now I've got the big book that I'm writing this year is all about dog soldiers. So looking forward to that.
I'm very excited for the Dog Soldiers book.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think for so many of us, you know, these opportunities were things that we went out and, you know, had to go and get ourselves, you know, similar to what you were saying, Danny, like, and yourself, Billy, Kay, like, they're all things that we went, right, see it, got a passion, want to do this, like, let's make it happen. What about you, Ash?
Oh, for me, I think it kind of, obviously, like all of us have always loved horror. Like it's always kind of been woven into everything I do. Like at school, I was writing creepy little stories based on Darren Shan books for my like exams and that sort of thing. And it kind of just grew from doing it from the kind of the educational standpoint of starting film studies and kind of exploring horror in that way. And then when I went to university, I knew that I wanted to do entertainment writing, and I knew I wanted it to be about horror films. So I joined our student magazine called The Edge, which was fantastic. It was a great experience. I got to like watch films and get them early, and I was like, oh my god, the industry's amazing, an early film. And I just had a great time doing it, and I still do now. I'm just so glad that I managed to kind of carve out like something that kind of carried on with that. I think the very first thing I did, because I've always loved writing and horror writing, was it's like an animated film called Help, I'm a Fish. And it's about the bunch of children who drink some potion and then become fish. And they're like, help, I'm a fish. And I wrote a horror version of it, of a man that turns into a tree, which really was not any good or effective. The scariness of a man being a tree did not come through. But that was probably the first piece of content that I like really made. And then for What Culture, my first official piece of actual career content would have been the best horror films of 2017, which was just very simple, looking up all the best stuff. And it kind of snowballed from there, because so many people are fans of horror and love having lists of horror and love being able to have recommendations and just a space to talk about all the positive things of horror. It was great to be able to kind of just jump on it from that point and be like, yes, people want to hear this too.
I absolutely love your fish thing, and I need to more about this. Went on to make it man turns into a tree. I think I saw a short horror film last year called like Man or Tree, and it's I think someone stole your idea there.
Oh my god. See, it's obviously people are thinking about the scariness of people trees because it's in there. But yeah, I wrote another one called The Cat Potion as well. I was really obsessed with this idea of people turning into things, and the cat potion was just help, I'm a fish, but help, I'm a cat. So less scary, more fun.
I feel like there's maybe an anthology in there, Janine, that you could pick up. For...
Yep.
Help, I'm a creature.
And what about you, Mo?
Oh God. A lot of my love for horror really started in high school. I took a lot of creative writing courses. One of my loves has always been short form writing, which I absolutely love. Anthologies, they're absolutely my heart center. So Janine, we have to chat.
Yay.
But I would write a lot of really disquieting and disturbing stories to where it was like, is everything okay at home? But but that's kind of where it stemmed from, is writing that, and that kind of took off into writing more for screen when I was through college, and kind of beyond that, and trying to find and create more marginalized characters in horror, which is really difficult, especially if you're working and you're expanding on the genre, which is sci-fi horror, sci-fi in general. And really, to me, at a point where I was just getting back into the classics of horror and realizing that George Romero was really the only person that let a Black person get so far in a horror movie, which was it's really disconcerting, and it was really disheartening that there wasn't anything of product that had survival in it for people of color in a horror genre. So that was really my instinct of really trying to go for it and meet other people, and being a woman in horror journalism, as you ladies know, is not easy, and it's a uphill battle. So trying to find my niche in there as well, and I'm starting to write with Final Draft, and then falling into this incredible group of women who now we are the Nyx Horror Collective. Started it actually in the fall of 2019, where our co-founders Melody Cooper and Kelly Krause both had kind of like in tandem hashtags that were looking for women that were in horror, and we all kind of found each other, and the group was very, very massive. And then as the pandemic went on, it's really, 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 really small, understandably so, because it's life, and a lot of incredibly traumatic things were going on for a lot of folks. But within that, it was just, what is the mission of what we're trying to do? And it was really just to celebrate and elevate women's voices and women identifying creators in genre, and marginalized people that are working in genre, because there's been so many male counterparts that are high in the industry and genre that are just like, I don't know any women filmmakers in horror. Like, where are they? I haven't seen any, not even once. So that's been very difficult for us to kind of stomach. And so, for us to create the 13 minutes of horror was like, not only is the challenge not for anybody else, but those who are also overlooked in the industry, but also, can you do it in 1 minute? And if you can do it in 1 minute, you're getting to the crux of the scare. And then it's just kind of giving you more in your your arsenal to build out scarier, more concise stories, which is eventually two of our filmmakers, their calling cards, and they're going out to do amazing stuff right now. So I think, oh god, I just take you the long way around. I'm really sorry about that. He has already started. I think just for me, like, it's just starting and not being, finding out what scares me the most, and loving horror from such a young age really led me to my vocation that I have now, which is a behavioral therapist. And so I write a lot of psychological horror, and understanding like mental health in the horror aspect, actually how women are shown with mental health in horror movies, which could be a really big drag, or it could be, something that is done well, which there aren't any. There's a lot of tropes for women in mental health and horror. So I'm just trying to be in the market of working to change that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you brought that up, and we won't go into it too much because now I'm like, oh, idea for another one. But I was speaking to a few of the ghouls the other day, and we were actually in a conversation. We started, talking about the topic that we thought that a lot of women and their, mental health was not portrayed in the best way in a lot of horror films, and I think we can all agree that there's been many problematic portrayals of women in general
100%.
and marginalized communities and voices in horror, but hopefully we are the voices that get to change that, as you said, Mo. And what about yourself, Alex?
Yeah, so the first kind of like horror thing I did that I would say kind of led me on this now very over 10 long year path that I've been on was when I was doing my master's degree. And I did my master's degree at the University of Toronto. Here I'm in Toronto, Canada. And I was doing it. I did my undergrad in theater, and I got to doing like my final paper for my degree, and I was like, I don't want to fucking write about Shakespeare. I don't want to write about Ibsen. I don't want to write about Chekhov. You know, not enough people knew like Sarah Kane or Carol Churchill enough for them to be like, write about them because they're amazing. No. And I, you know, was talking to my prof for the class that the paper was for, and he was fantastic. And we just wound up just chatting about stuff. And I was kind of like a low key horror fan. I wasn't, you know, really outwardly horror-y in my life at that point. And we just started talking about horror films. And the film that we started talking about was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And he's like a theater guy. He was like he was wonderful. But he was like, I fucking love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Let's talk about it for an hour. And we talked about it. And then he was like, do you want to like, if you can find a way in about some of the theory we've talked about this semester and horror films, you can write about horror films. I don't care. I love horror films. Do it. So I did. And it was about horror films that purport to be real. And it was inspired by that Texas Chainsaw Massacre conversation. And I got to do a ton of interesting research. I was super passionate about the content. And it was just, you know, I will occasionally go back and look at that paper for, you know, reference of a few things I cited. And I'm like, oh, that was a heavy academic text I was doing. And I've moved very far away from that now. But yeah, it was the start of something. And around the same time, I was, you know, getting into journalism, doing a lot of freelance writing, but I was focused on like fashion and beauty and like lifestyle stuff, which is still fun. I still like that stuff. But it was like I just moved progressively just horror all the time, anytime I could do it. And now that's a big part of my life.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like it's as soon as someone gives you kind of that light, you know, of going, write about something you enjoy doing, you go, oh shit. Like I was very similar to you, Alex, that at university I was writing about fashion with a group of amazing, you know, gals but they were very into fashion. I had no fucking clue. I was like, this is fashionable, right? No. And then one day I said to my tutor, can I write an article about cannibal holocaust? And he went, sure. Yeah. And I was like, yes. So next to their fashion picture in the student magazine was that image of a woman impaled. And I was like,
awesome.
Yeah. And I kind of had another similar thing where I was talking to a friend of mine right after I finished my MA, and I was really getting into writing and I really loved it. And she was a full-time journalist and fashion, beauty, all that stuff. And I took her out for a drink, which was a lot for me because I was very broke at that time. And I was like, how do I do it? What do I do? And she was like, do you really love fashion and beauty, or do you love something else more? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, because there's a lot of people out there who love fashion and beauty and who will like come for you and cut you down. So it's better that you do the stuff you're really passionate about. And then if people, you know, come for you or try to cut you down, which I'm sure we've all experienced in horror, at least then you've got like a fortitude behind it. And that was, you know, something like we talked about at those drinks. And I remember she's like, what are you really passionate about? And I was like, I love movies. She was like, no, too general. What's more specific than that? And I was like, horror. I love horror. And she was like, go write about horror. And that, yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So I guess it's quite clear from what everyone said that obviously we're horror fans, hence why we're here. What I'm quite keen to understand is we've all clearly got very different backgrounds in how we got into like kind of creating about horror, but what was it from a horror standpoint? Like, was there a particular film, text, person that first like really made you realize just how passionate you were about the genre? Do you want to start, Danny?
Okay, so for me, it's more of an era. It's when I was in the kind of my last few high school years in the late 90s, and all those 90s horror movies happened. So Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Craft, Urban Legend, Final Destination. And they were kind of horror, but they had comedy elements. They were glossy, and I just loved them. And just literally from watching them, and they all came out, there's so many at the same time, I just literally became obsessed. And I was like, I just love horror. And since then, I mean, I rarely watch anything that's not horror. I mean, I do, but you know, mainly I just watch horror. So after I left drama school, I didn't really necessarily I didn't intend to only do horror. I kind of fell into it, and then I was like, I'm making movies in the genre that I love, so I've stuck with it. I haven't really felt the need to go elsewhere. Of course, if something came up that was, you know, a nice character, I'd want to do it, but I've really just kind of stuck with the horror. And then with the writing, I find horror just easier to write as well, so I kind of combine a bit of everything. But yeah, I mean, I just loved it from then.
I mean, I'm the same as you. Like, I always want to watch other films, and my partner, he loves, you know, like sci-fi, and I'm like, oh, right, let's do it. And then it's just like, can't help but want to go back to watching a horror film, right? It's like, and what about UK?
Okay, so in high school, or like even before then, I think the two biggest things, I mean, obviously TV was a big way that I got into horror. It was a Saturday afternoon, like cable movies. They would always play like horror movies on like UPN, is what we had in my area, or sometimes our local affiliate, like TV 38. So I saw a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have, and they probably shouldn't have aired at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. But also, TNT's Monster Vision with Joe Bob on Saturday nights is I was exposed to a lot of films that way, and the one that I remember most is seeing Carrie for the first time. And so, obviously, as like a lonely queer kid growing up, I definitely felt like I could relate to Carrie in a lot of ways, up to a point that wasn't too problematic, I promise. and then, um, and then at the end, I remember when the stinger scene when Sue Snell's hand pops out of the grave, I like fell off the couch. I just had this like deep like panic in my chest. And I remember being like, what is that feeling? How could I feel? How can something I'm just like watching on TV get this like feeling out of me? This was like, I don't know, it's like 5th or 6th grade or something. And in our like science class, they had like a box where you could put like anonymous questions in. That's usually for like kids who are like embarrassed to ask questions about puberty and stuff. But I put in a question of like, what is the feeling when you're watching a horror movie and you feel like you're having a heart attack? And then they talked about adrenaline. And I was like, oh, okay, I want more of that.
I absolutely adore that you put that in the school like question box. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Puberty's
I hope whoever at school answered that like also appreciated your love of horror as well, and was like, you do need more of that adrenaline. Go watch more horror. What about you, Ash?
Oh gosh, I think I've always kind of been steeped in horror because my family loves it. Like my parents are both big horror nuts as well in their own way. Like my mom's very into like crime writing and spooky books, and my dad's very into like schlocky B movie, horrible, like The Thing. Goodness, I say B movie and The Thing in the same sentence, not intended. But yeah, like just the good ones as well. But yeah, he loves all that sort of stuff. And I grew up reading Stephen King, so absolutely Stephen King. Like I can see Janine, you've got them all in the background there. Hell yeah, hell yeah. Like I love him. Like reading Skeleton Crew was like a transcendent experience for me, and then seeing that kind of transformed into The Mist, I was like, oh, horror is the best thing in the world. I was always a really scared like child growing up as well, and it took me a little while to grow into horror movies, I think I'd say, because I remember vividly, I think I watched Signs when I was like the tender age of 11 or something like that. Not too young, not too old, not too young. And it absolutely gave me nightmares for weeks, literally, of seeing the little alien's hand be like, so I just couldn't cope with it. And I was so fascinated with the concept of being scared of something that I knew logically wasn't real and knew that had come from a film. And that it gotten kind of into my head that way. And I'd go to the playground at school, and my other friend was really into horror movies, and everyone she watched would be like, tell me the plot, tell me everything. I want to know everything that's happening in a movie without watching it. So she'd like relay all of these plots. I remember she was watching Identity, like when she was like way too young for it, and she was telling me all about this guy's head in a washing machine. I was like, surely not. And I had a great time with it. So I also like Whitney Moore. I love Whitney Moore. Like, she does This Week in Horror for Bloody Disgusting. She's in Birdemic, Shock and Terror. And seeing kind of her career, I loved it and was like, man, I didn't realize you could do like horror presenting as a thing. I want to do that. I want to talk about lists. I want to like write this stuff. So yeah, Whitney Moore as well. Just absolutely love her.
Yeah, I love Whitney Moore. I always like, I need to do more horror lists.
Yeah.
What
Whitney Moore on the list, eh? Sorry.
I love that. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I feel like I've heard kind of echoes of my own experience in what everyone has already said. And Kay, like, absolutely. I remember the first time I saw Carrie, probably around the same age. I like flew out of my chair. I like lost my mind, lost it. But it was incredible. And, you know, I was born in 1985, and I feel like there was like just kind of a weirdness in culture, or at least the culture I got to experience. So it was like, felt like I was just kind of climbing up the weirdness ladder, everything from like Tim Burton movies to the Addams Family movies, even like the Bill Murray movie Scrooged, which gets really like dark and weird, all the way to like when I was hitting, you know, my preteens into teens, all of the like 90s teen horror movies, those were big for me. So it was like I just kind of was like found all these steps, and I always say like it just feels like something inherent in all of us, that we're just, you know, that we are strange and unusual, that it's something that like our soul is drawn to and we can't escape it. And I love it. Take me.
Take us all, right? And Janine, what about you? I'm guessing, you know, Stephen King is probably one, seeing as Ash has already pointed out you've got all the books.
Yeah, similar to so many of you, I'm an 80s girl, so I grew up with all of that. And similar to Ash, my parents were both very much into horror, so there was always Stephen King books around. So I read Salem's Lot when I was about 9 or 10. And that kind of is like, wow, we didn't have Goosebumps over here, sort of in the 80s. So my introduction didn't come through that kind of level. It was like straight into Stephen King, which is great. And then I was allowed to kind of watch what I wanted on TV as well. So I can remember watching a Freddy film again when I was about 8 or 9, something like that. And then the film I can remember, which really kind of like drew me into the type of horror that I like, was Fright Night. And I suddenly realized that you can have horror and comedy. And that was just like something kind of clicked. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I like. I like all the grossness, and I want to be scared, but I want to be able to laugh at it as well. And then the thing that really cemented it was when I was 12, I watched a program called Ghost Watch. Now I don't know how many, obviously with it being, it was a UK thing. So this is 1992. It was presented as a real documentary, and I was 12 years old. And I don't think I have ever been as scared in my entire life, because the whole way they did it with like the news presenters and everything going in, it was like the Blair Witch of its time kind of thing. And it was so realistic. And even to this day, I've never rewatched it because I've never been brave enough. So I've spoken Stephen Volk, who wrote it. I know, because he lives not too far from me. I know that it hugely inspired Jed Shepherd and Rob Savage when they made Host and all of that. So I've spoken to all of them, but I can't go back and watch it. So that kind of like, I've always had that thing with horror, that I'm the kind of horror writer that's actually scared of loads of stuff. Ghosts scare the shit out of me. Clowns scare the life out of me. I can't watch anything to do with like drowning and stuff like that, because of just like The Descent, one of Neil Marshall's films. I was literally in the cinema with my feet up, almost shaking because of the claustrophobia with it all. So in a way it kind of helps, because I already know people's fears, especially primal fears, so I put that into my own writing. But yeah, I'm the kind of horror author and lover that watches things like, but give me blood and guts. You know, I write splatterpunk stuff. I love anybody being ripped apart on the screen. That's fine. I can deal with all of that.
I'm exactly the same. I hate to admit it, but there are so many films that I watch through a little gap like this, and I can't remember what it was the other week. But genuinely, I had to have all the, like, we have automatic lights. I started putting the lights on before I went to the bathroom in the night, and I was like, oh my God, yourself a fun, right? But here we are. And what about you, Mo?
I think for me, like I was a latchkey kid. So I was I was born in the late 70s. So for me, like the all the really cool early 80s movies we had access to because mother wasn't home. And the cable in the US showed whatever it wanted to at any time. And you just kind of, that's what it was. It wasn't like, oh, this is gonna, we're gonna show this later, unless it was like Lady Chatterley's something or other. But it was really interesting because I really fell in love with really being a voracious reader of horror when I was very, very young. Like I'm talking like, 7, 8, 9, 10, reading a lot of like Clive Barker stuff that I should not have read. Ray Bradbury is probably one of my ultimate disquieting horror, sci-fi horror writers. And then being a comic fan and witnessing the Creepshow movie for the first time. And seeing how and to Janine's point, comedy horror and things that are just like really like eerie and just give you that like sense of like internal dread. I absolutely love. Like I love movies that follow me around for weeks. Because like you just can't get them out of your system. And I think that that's kind of where it really kicked off for me. And then seeing and being in that midst of being, little and having access to things like Fright Night and to The Thing and The Shining and, American Werewolf in London and all of the, like, I feel like the 80s were such, at least for me, such an intense time for just putting horror, 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 horror. Like it would be like there would be 5 or 6 horror movies that would come out in a year. And that was the norm. And it was great. And, you have that mix of like comedy and sci-fi and horror and things like They Live and The Stuff and The Blob. And I think I was very, very lucky being a latchkey kid because there was no one saying, no, you can't watch this. And that was, I think that kind of forever changed me, being like, I had access to all this. It was kind of like being bad, It was like being the bad kid and having the access to stuff. And, talking to my friends and being like, yeah, I've seen it. Like, I totally saw that like 2 years ago. But I feel like that's kind of how I am now. And, I have a little, and he's going to be 12 this year. And we're kind of slowly creeping into horror. And, he walks into my office every day and he was like, when are we going to watch that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I think back to myself and being like, I watched that when you were probably, I was 8 years old. So I think what's exciting is the access that I had so early to absolutely everything kind of gave me a head start and what I liked and what I wanted to write about as an author. Like there are things that I don't want to write about. I don't like a lot of scenes that go on too long that have a lot of child torture. Like I can't read that. I can't, even before I became a mom, I can't stomach that. So those are things that I will have to be like, look away, look away, look away once it's done. But yeah, to Janine's point, like give me body horror all day long because I absolutely love that. And I love writing about that. So I think it was my early access that got me into absolutely loving the genre from the jump.
I wish I had been allowed early access. My parents were like, absolutely fucking not. You're not doing that. So yeah, I was quite a late comer. And I blame that on the reason why now I'm watching the even nastier depraved shit. I'm like, should have let me watch it earlier. Wouldn't have gone as far as I have now. And what about you, Billy?
Yeah, like everyone's kind of experience kind of is echoes in my own, but the one kind of slight difference is that I'm Irish and Ireland is like deceptively conservative. And I was born in 94, which technically in Irish standards was kind of nearly like 85 because we were like 10 years behind the rest of the world. And essentially, like my mom, kind of like yourself, so like my dad loves horror, he loves sci-fi, he just loves movies, whereas my mom would have been a lot more kind of stringent and protective and didn't like me watching whatever I wanted. She was like really protective, so I had to find ways and means around that because I think a lot of it I can track it back to a design perspective, which is funny enough. Like, we didn't have Blockbuster, but we had a thing called Extravision. And every time I went into Extravision, I was always drawn towards kind of the horror box art. It just always kind of called to me. So I used to make mental notes of like what I liked, and like when I'm older, I'm going to go rent that. And like one of my earliest, funnily enough, memories as a child was when I lived in Dublin. We lived near a cinema, and I remember seeing they had a giant poster for a Scary Movie, and I recognized Ghostface from the VHS box art of Scream that was in Extravision. And I remember saying to my mum, "Oh, mommy, what's that?" And she said, "Oh, Scary Movie." But I obviously couldn't read very well at the time because I was quite young, and I got really annoyed. And I was like, "No, I know it's a scary movie, but like, what is it?" And she was like, "It's a Scary Movie." And I was like, "No, what is it?" And she was like, "Scary Movie." And then I went, "Oh, okay, fair enough." I wouldn't accept the fact that it wasn't a Scream movie. I wasn't getting it, like. But I think, funnily enough, I can track back a lot of my my obsession, I suppose, not even to movies, because like I'd probably, funny enough, be kind of more scared now as an adult than when I was as a kid, because nothing kind of scared or shocked me as a child, unless it was to do like with world-ending asteroids. That was the only thing I was afraid of. That was the only thing I was afraid of. Like if you showed me Armageddon or anything like that, I would have died. But anything else, I would have sat through completely stone-faced. I would have enjoyed it, but I wouldn't have been too bothered. But I would have, I suppose, it was actually comics and kind of games that got me into horror more so than even the movies. Because as I said, I had to kind of traverse that landscape with my mom because she was very protective, and she did a really good job of kind of shielding me from stuff, almost too good. And like yourself, it's kind of backfired now because I'm so immersed. But like the first time I played like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, like I was just like that opening kind of sequence of Resident Evil when the Stars team come across the first zombie and he turns his face and his mouth is bloody. Like I thought I was going to die. I was like, "What is that? Kill it with fire now! Shoot it! Shoot it! Shoot it!" And it was the same with kind of like my dad collected Spawn and Judge Dredd comics, and they are horrendously violent, the pair of them. And I used to sneak into he had a closet that he kind of hid them all from me, but he didn't know I knew they were there. So I used to go in and just watch people being ripped apart on the panels. So that was kind of my genesis, I suppose. That as I got older, then when I was able to kind of sneak my way around the kind of the movie scene, I was able to play catch up. But it was games and comics more so than anything else, I think.
I mean, horror games, yeah, absolutely not. I tap out. Like that is where I draw the line. I tried playing one at a friend's house, and I don't remember what it's called, but it was within the first 2 minutes. I went, "No, I'm not playing that." I was like, "I can't get in the window, mate." I was like, "That is just too scary." And yeah, when I was a kid, my babysitter used to play Silent Hill. No, I can't do. So that's probably like I'd say that's my personal limit. So it's clear that everyone here is a horror fan and everyone watching is a horror fan too. So I'm just going to take a quick break here to say thank you to everyone that is currently watching this event happening at the moment and everyone that is going to be watching afterwards. This will be available everywhere. If you are a fan of Ghouls Magazine and you would like to see more panel discussions like this, more podcasts, more editorials, then you can head over to our website. It's ghoulsmagazine.com/Ghouls Gang, and you can get yourself your first month free of our Ghouls Gang membership, which is lots of extra content. We're launching a podcast Monday. If I pull my finger out and actually get on some editing, we're launching a new podcast on Monday, and that is a monthly podcast. We'll probably be releasing about 2 to 3 episodes every single month. To get your first month free, just use the code Happy B Day at the checkout. All of the details are in the scrolling banner thing at the bottom. I'll leave it there for a bit. That's me doing my promo shit. Let's get back to our conversation. So I've got a bit more of a hard-hitting question for you all. So of course, this month is Women in Horror Month, and I want to talk a little bit about the community and how we found it. And I think Mo, you touched on this quite a bit earlier, so I'm probably going to start with you for this. Have you found that there's been any challenges for you as a woman creator in the horror industry?
Yeah, I think we all have, and we all might have similar answers, but I think the main struggle personally that I've gotten is, the old adage that for some reason we create 100% of population but are unable to speak on anything that does not involve being cutesy. And that's been really, really tough. I mean, even as working with Nix and trying to find support systems for the film fest, it's just like, there's the adage of like, oh, I didn't even know girls were into horror. Which is like, I don't know where you get I don't know who you're talking to. But I think the challenge that I've personally seen is just opportunity. Accessibility has been incredibly difficult. In order to fail at something, you have to at least be given the opportunity to try to do it. And if you are not, and I think roundabout what I have found is that when you try to establish opportunities or you ask for opportunities, you found out very quickly who your allies are and who are ally adjacent, because it's very easy to say that you support, women working in genre, but you don't hire them for jobs. You don't ask them their perspective. You don't give them opportunities to share their perspective. That is really, really difficult. And when you try to explain that to folks, you end up doing this kind of free reductionist service about how it's very difficult for women, which is really exhausting, I think. So my challenges have been really not having enough accessibility to, I worked as a journalist, as a horror journalist for an outfit that was predominantly run by men, and had a Women in Horror Month video series that did not even ask me how I felt about it. Would I like to be involved? Would I like to speak about it? And, when I went to the owner of it, it was just like, oh, well, that was like kind of his idea and he ran with it. So I was like, it's fine. So it's just like the dismissiveness of that. Like, why are you, like, we're, at least we're doing it. Like, why are you upset? At least it's being done. But I think, much like anything that has, that is designated to a month is really hard on the person that's supposed to be championed that month. So I think if we can give the, folks that are listening, or the folks that, do support your colleagues in horror, and I'm sure that people are watching have colleagues that are here on screen and friends that are in the genre, do your best to let them know about opportunities in horror that you come across. It's absolutely free for now on Twitter to shout out about people's work, to share things, to give people a shout out, to signal boost. And, male counterparts, if you love a friend that happens to be, a woman identifying creator, hire them. Just hire them. It doesn't take that much to like shadow me, be a DP on something. And if that happens more often, then we will be less likely to find ourselves in things like Women's Lab this weekend, Women's Shadowing event this weekend. We don't need to shadow anything. We're well aware of how to do things. You're just not giving us the opportunity. So excess training is a moot point. Just hire us. So I think my issue has been not getting the accessibility to the places where I want to write. And even pitching things, if you're pitching things to people or those who are receiving pitches of women who are writing in genre, answer them. Like, even if you don't like it, even if you're like, this probably isn't right for us, just answer them, because it's very much, we want to know what our areas of opportunities are to grow and how we can kind of be better, but also having an opportunity first and foremost is probably my biggest bugaboo about that. So I'm coming down off my soapbox right now. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, thank you for that, because you're completely right. It's all about opportunities, and I think, you know, we're definitely seeing I think a shift, you know, in the horror community and in opportunities coming up more often. But I definitely think there is a long way to go, a lot more work to be done in that space. Kate, I want to throw the question over to you, because I feel like you know, you've got a lot to say on this topic, and I love how vocal you are on Twitter, because we need more of that, like, vocal.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hold you to that. I mean, honestly, I couldn't say it any better than what, like, everything Mo said was perfect. And the main thing that I wanted to stress was opportunity. You know, obviously, women are highly capable of doing many things. So it's just they're not being afforded the opportunity to showcase that, and therefore continue to grow by having those experiences. So hiring women, funding women led projects, I think is huge. You know, I think it's really, like, upsetting that when you think of, like, the quote masters of horror, you know, there's like John Carpenter, Joe Dante, you know, there's like all the same people. Who are all amazing, but there are very few women names that are like have this filmography that comes to mind when you say them as a, you know, this say that they're a director. So I think of, like, for me, it's Kat Shea and Catherine Bigelow, who have really wonderful, like, a body of work that is in conversation with each other, and I think they have a lot to say, but they're not included in those names of the go-to names of Masters of Horror. So in order for that to happen, we need more women directors. And I think there are, I mean, obviously there are a ton of would-be women directors, and there are an increasing amount of directors who have been able to create a film, or writers, or, you know, cinematographers. But that's maybe their only one so far. You know what I mean? Like, I want to think about women having a body of work, not just like the one break. Because in horror, that's like, one, how you keep getting work, but two, how you become sort of like this staple of the horror community. It's sort of like a legend. And, you know, I wish we had more female legends in horror. With Salem Horror Fest, I'm really proud and proud to address what you were saying about people being like, oh, women like horror. 60% of our audience are women. And so, you know, I think that may be more than most, but it's still, I think, indicative that, you know, that women like everything, just everything that men like, women like them too. So I think that it's important to acknowledge that. I want to do more in general with the fest. I want the festival to be a platform for many different voices, but especially women. And the fact that we're in Salem, and given our history and everything, I think that it's like extra special that we have so many women involved. In Salem, I just want to do a quick plug that we have a woman mayor, we have a woman executive director of our tourism bureau, we have a woman state senator, we have a woman state representative, we have like woman-led businesses throughout the city. So I'm really proud of Salem, to say I'm from Salem, that we have so many. Like this whole area is run by women, and and better for it. So. Yeah, again, to echo what Mo said, I think it's just, you just got to give everyone opportunity, and we can all do the rest.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, Salem sounds amazing. Like, up to me right now. I'm coming over, I swear to God.
Do you'll love it.
And Danny, I'm quite keen to hear your thoughts, because obviously you come back from, you know, you worked in the glamour model business here in the UK, which, you know, doesn't always get the best reputation, let's say, for how women are portrayed or treated by some of the viewers. So I'm really keen to kind of hear whether you've had any challenges yourself as a woman in horror.
To be honest, for the most part, I have been very, very lucky, and even the men that I've worked with tend to be really, really supportive and like have pushed me into kind of, you know, the direction I want to be in. I've been very, very lucky with the people. But when I was modeling, I mean, I was blonde then. It was very, you know, I had a different look. And although I loved horror, I was very kind of Barbie. And I will notice the difference. As soon as I kind of went dark, the difference, the way men will treat you is something like they might have a little bit more respect for you that they didn't have before, when you're like, well, I'm the same person. And I just think it's just, but that's the problem there. When I was producing my first film, some of the crew were kind of older men, and I could definitely see that they didn't like having a woman in charge of them, or, you know, a woman sort of producer, and they were kind of trying to go over your head and do certain different things. So I mean, there are problems, but I think I mean, other than that, for the most part, I've been very lucky.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You know, I don't think it's all necessarily bad out there. You know, me as well, quite similar to you, Danny. I've had, you know, there's been challenges, but for the most part, like, I've seen that, you know, there's a lot of great people in the community, and we do have a lot of allies out there. So I guess it's kind of about taking an approach of, you know, making sure that we're not always just saying everyone's awful, because that's definitely not true. Alex, Ash, Billy, or Janine, have any of you had any challenges as a woman in the horror industry?
Do you guys want some hot gossip?
Yes.
I'm not going to name names, but when so I've been working in the horror community industry for over 10 years now. But when I started in the Toronto scene, where I am, and if anyone can ever make it over to Toronto, it has a really strong horror scene. And so I was writing for some international publications, and then I started to get to know people here in the city. And it was this crew of guys who were all straight white men who ran this kind of crew, and it was like, if you weren't their girlfriend, they didn't really know what to do with you. And after I went through, I thought like one guy was kind of my bud, and then he started like icing me out of stuff. And like only in the last year, as we were able to safely gather here in Toronto, there was a little party, and we were both a little drunk, and he'd been avoiding me for years. And then he just kind of looked at me, and I was at this party. We just wound up in the same space, and he was like, you know what? I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that things were awkward between us. And it was because I liked you and I didn't know what to do with it. And hopefully we can be cool now. And I was like, you know what? We can. So yeah, that was my introduction to the horror community. And from there, I was able to meet Andrea Subasati, who I do the Faculty of Horror with. And we both kind of felt like we'd hit these limits on our own. And so we kind of said, we don't have a seat at the boys' table here in Toronto. We're going to go build our own table, which comes with an inherent amount of privilege that we were able to do that. But we basically said, fuck it, we're going to go do this. And this was 2012 that we started the podcast. And this was pre-serials. So most people didn't really know what a podcast was. So we were early adopters there. But we just kind of kept it, and we kept growing. And there's still so many issues within the community. But I can say I've seen quite a bit of positive change. And I think we are figuring different things out and working through things in different ways. And I just wanted to share, we've been fortunate as Faculty of Horror to be guests at Salem Horror Fest. I think each and every time Kay does it, we're like, hello. We don't care if it's a pandemic, we're coming safely.
You do not have to ask.
What you don't know is I'm actually outside your house right now. But it struck me, and we've always kind of been like, oh, is this the horror things? Are they for us, and what to do? And, you know, Andrea and I both had separate experiences at horror conventions and things like that. But I always remember the first Salem Horror Fest we did, where we did a live show, and we got to meet a lot of listeners, which was incredible. And people traveled from all over to see us and then meet us. And we were talking to these two young women, and they were so lovely. And one of them kind of said to me, she was like, wow, I've never ever felt welcome at like a horror convention or festival before. I just never did. But getting to see you guys and being here in Salem and seeing like everyone working here, it just feels so welcoming. And I really, really want to come back. And I've heard that sentiment repeated almost every time we've been there. I think, yeah, every time we've been there in different ways. And it's, you know, we are creating these spaces, and we need to continue to create these spaces. And to echo what Mo said, if someone creates something and you like it, it doesn't take a lot to shout them out, and it makes their day. It platforms them. I've certainly been clued on to a lot of different people and content because of people doing that. So take the time and shout those people out.
Absolutely. I mean, like we said, just sharing a tweet, retweeting someone, shouting about it, it makes such a big difference, especially, to all of us who are out there busting our balls to create, amazing pieces of horror, write podcasts, videos, festivals, modeling, everything. It's like one click of a button and you've immediately just helped a tiny bit. Ash, have you had any challenges yourself, or how have you found kind of being a woman in horror?
So I think for me, I've been very, very fortunate again with my teams that I've been in. They've been amazing. Like the people I've worked with have been incredible. I've been in very male heavy industries, like with kind of film criticism on YouTube, and then video game writing. They're quite male dominated. The kind of problems that have faced me, or I have faced, were more kind of, I think it just comes from the role itself of being like a presenter or like an online personality. Sometimes you get people that, get a bit much in the DMs. Like I've got some, oh my God, like I've got some colorful messages, which I can only assume I know my male colleagues aren't getting the same ones, that are very like sexualized, that are very derogatory sometimes. Lots of lovely people that are being amazing. Like it's not all of them, but yeah, I do have my handful of kind of messages in various outlets where I've had to like shut down messaging systems on different social medias, or like just divert things away. And it's, yeah, I've had some that have really upset me. I've had some that are very funny. I've had some that are very fleshy. It's just, a mix of everything, So yeah, pictures, messages, all sorts. That's kind of where that comes from. And I think that's kind of I don't know where that comes from, or what that is, or why people choose to do that, or what kind of their angle is. It's just kind of comes with the job, and it's something I've accepted now and kind of like, put up my own boundaries for and figured out how to deal with, as whilst also keeping all the lovely community that we have around YouTube involved as well, because you don't want to cut out all the good for the sake of the bad as well. But yeah, it took me a real long time to kind of come to terms with people having access to you as a person, and B, having opinions on that as well. Like I went to therapy for a little while because I just couldn't cope with doing like YouTube for a bit, because so many people had an opinion on how I looked, or like how I spoke, or how, anything that was just related to me and not the content I was making. I was like, please, I'm making such brilliant horror lists. But yeah, it's I feel very at peace and very comfortable with it now. But that was something I wasn't prepared for, being a woman in this industry, kind of tied into presenting as much as it is horror. The horror fans that talk about horror, that engage with your content, that are great with it, are amazing. There is nobody out there like the horror community. They are brilliant. But the few bad eggs that kind of get themselves involved because they want to gatekeep, or, go after a woman like are the ones that make you a bit conscious of dealing with it. But yeah.
Yeah, YouTube comments is a place I try not to. I like going in there, and then sometimes I'm like, why did I? There was an amazing the other day that was like, I'd love to make you my wife and bring you home to my mother, but she'd fucking hate you. And I was like, I don't understand this. And he was like, and our children, what would they think of you? And I was like, I'm very confused about the approach to this. So, it is a strange place. Internet, wow.
I've got one guy in my Instagram thing, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've just got one that's going on at the moment where it's just, he's written a life for us that he's living, where like, we're married and we have children, and this is the future we could accept if only I got back to him. And it's just that sort of thing that just comes with the territory, and it's just interesting. It's just fun.
Wow, he sounds cute. For sure. Billy or Janine, finally over to you. Have either of you found any challenges as a woman in the horror industry?
I'll go. Personally, not particularly. I've been quite lucky, and I think because coming from policing, which is quite a male-dominated profession as well, I kind of have just used to men, if that makes sense, and kind of like and just know how to react to things that they say and that kind of stuff. So and in fact, I've had far worse comments when I used to be a police officer than I've had, you know, sort of as a horror writer. So I've got my skin's quite thick with that. But part of the reason why we started Candisha Press, which is a women-only press, was because sort of like you pick up any anthology and it was like 90% men that were writing, and then like maybe one or two token women that were involved in it, and we were just like, no, we don't want this, let's start a press. But we're only going to have women, we're not going to have any men, we just want women to write for us so that we can amplify their voices. And we take a lot of first time women writers as well, to again just give them that first chance to have a publication, women from all over the world. And that's anyone that identifies as a woman as well, obviously, women of color, anything like that, anybody that's marginalized, that we can get into our anthologies. And Zoe said that we just sent a nice copy of our brand new one called Slasher, which is 21 stories, again, obviously all by women, but in the slasher genre, because again, it's a subgenre which has been dominated by male authors and male writers and whatnot. And usually the only women that you get in, especially in movies and things, are obviously your final girls, and some of them are fucking fantastic, you know, like Sydney Prescott, or, you know, obviously Laurie and everybody. That's amazing. But what if we get women writing it, and what if it's the slasher is a woman, and it's not because she's got mental issues or anything like that, she just fucking likes killing people, because why can't we do that? So that's what we went for. So
yeah. You know, with your knife, like, let's go.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing, why do women need a deep, meaningful reason to have to do something? Why can't we just go mad and enjoy it, you know? And there's like there's a lot of sexual content in there as well, because why can't a woman get off on it? Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing that we, and one of the subgenres that I tend to write in is splatterpunk. And again, splatterpunk and extreme horror is something which has been so male dominated for years and years and years, because nobody could think that a woman would want to write about, you know, like all that really sexy stuff, you know, like people that can only get off when they're killing someone and all that kind of stuff, you know. Why not? Why can't we do anything that men can do? So, you know, like I've got a story in a splatterpunk magazine about a teenage boy that can only get off when there's blood involved and ends up fucking his dead mum's head. Because why can't women do stuff like that? So yeah, that's but I haven't had, if anything, I've been very lucky that when some of my male counterparts have found that I quite like doing that kind of stuff, and I'm quite happy to put myself out there, they're like, fuck yes, we want you to come and write and do stuff with us. So it's almost worked in my favor that again, with it being a subgenre that not so many women are involved in, when they find out that somebody is, instead of being like, no, you cannot have a seat at our table, they've been like, yes, come and join us. So yeah,
I love that, Janine, that's amazing. And Billy, what about you?
Yeah, my experience has kind of been 50-50, I suppose. Like, so initially, before I went to college to do design, I wanted to kind of break into film in any capacity possible. And rather than going to study it, I wanted to kind of literally come in from the ground level, like as a production assistant, and just learn everything. And I learned after about 2-ish years of pushing and grinding that it was just not going to work out in my favor, because every single person I came across, predominantly, of course, the Irish film industry is very small and it's very male dominated, like everywhere, I suppose, but like Ireland is so small anyway, it's especially bad. And yeah, it was just really treacherous, dangerous territory. So I kind of got disheartened that I bounced, luckily, before anything happened. But there was some really kind of close, like very scary calls. And I was only 18-ish at the time. And it kind of knocked my confidence a bit. So I had to kind of, I suppose, kind of think my position on certain things. And it was such an odd thing as well, because like growing up, I did a lot of I suppose like traditionally kind of male dominated sports and interests and stuff. So like I was in martial arts for years. I was in karate for about 6 or 7 years, and I kind of I loved the fact that I was kind of on the back foot as a woman, because I was like, okay, you think you're brilliant just because you're a chap, but I'm gonna kick your ass, and then you'll see. And even like I worked in GameStop for about a year, and I loved nothing more than when people used to come into the shop and they'd see me behind the desk, and either they try and flirt with me, or they go, oh, sweetie, could you go get one of the boys? So I go, okay. I go get one of the boys. The boys would come out and they'd have a question about whatever. And then they'd have to go, okay, no, we need to redirect you back to Billie Jean because we don't know. So I'd come back out and go, oh, hi. So how did the boys help you? Oh, they didn't? Well, come here, let me tell you how this all works. So when I started kind of Video Nasty, and again, like the Irish horror community is quite small, so I'd have friends, but they'd be predominantly online. I wouldn't have like many physical friends that are interested in it. But when I started Video Nasty, I made a conscious effort to be faceless, because I wanted it to be like almost like nearly like a resource, like an art resource initially. But then I kind of had too much fun engaging with the community, and like I used to, I'm trying to go back to it a bit more, but it's kind of heavy going. Whenever I used to post a palette, I'd nearly do like a mini essay alongside it, and it always got like loads of discourse and engagement. So I kind of loved having that kind of connection with people. So then I said, fuck it, like why not kind of show myself and my personality? If people seem to like it, like there's no harm in that. Like I don't have to have it faceless. But then the problem was that the minute people kind of copped that, oh, this isn't a guy. Like most people, in fairness, were quite chilled out, but like kind of similar to Ash, that suddenly I was getting these like really unwelcome messages, and folks that were like really cool when they thought I was a guy suddenly were like flirting with me and hitting on me, and then getting angry when I wasn't reciprocating. And I was going like, I don't know what you want from me. I'm still the same. It's you who's changed. So like a couple of weeks ago, I kind of had a bit of a rough patch with just people being really creepy and weird, but luckily it's kind of died down. But yeah, so it's kind of 50-50. Like for the most part, people have been quite chilled out and good. And there's been a lot of really cool people that have kind of helped elevate like Video Nasty and my journey and stuff. But then when it's been bad, it's been kind of fairly precarious. It's an odd one. It's really odd,
Yeah, it can be really tough. Like you said, it can play on your mind, and it can get to a couple of years ago, I had someone that overstepped the boundaries way too far, and it goes into territories that feels like very uncomfortable. Anyone that's sliding into anyone's DMs, if you're watching this, fucking stop, and we will hunt you down and chop everything you have off, because that is disgusting. So please stop. I'm very keen to wrap up our conversation. Well, not keen, because I would love to see you all. Right, I'm like, fuck off. I'm keen so I can give you back your time, because I've taken up too much of your time already. But I personally would love to be talking to you all day, because it's fascinating listening to all of your perspectives and viewpoints on everything. So I want to ask one final quick question, which I'm just going to throw out, and whoever would like to answer it, please do. If you don't have anything that you'd like to put into this one, absolutely fine. And then I'll get you all to promote the shit out of yourselves, because I want you to do that. So my last kind of question is, for anyone else that's looking to get into whether it's podcasting, presenting, modeling, writing, whatever it might be, what would be like your one piece of advice, if you've got any, for someone that's like hoping to create horror, or is kind of on their journey into creating horror?
Just to dive in, I think kind of from the industry that I am in, where it's about like kind of looking at films and things that people have created and talking about them from your own perspective, stay positive, uplift things that you love, like don't make the worst lists, or things that kind of just shit on other people's stuff. It's not nice. It doesn't do anything. I would say just maintain positive energy with everything that you watch. Celebrate the things you love, because people love hearing you talk about things you love. People want to hear what you like and why you like it, and he'd be passionate about it way more than they want to hear the controversial side of it. Like, yeah, controversy gets clicks. Controversy does get clicks, and people kind of go after that because they want to get seen rather than they want to be listened to. And I think talk about things that you love is just the most important lesson that I've learned throughout anything I've done online. It's just maintain that positive energy and send it out to the people, and it'll come back to you as well, because it's all about loving the things you love, and we love horror. So yeah, celebrate good stuff.
I'd say from a writing standpoint, write what you want to write, and the people that like that will find you. And it sounds really kind of like easier said than done, because there are a lot of, as someone who writes short form and has been writing short form for many, many years, I chased prompts and, we're looking for a song, a story about mermaids and scary mermaids. And it's like, the story about scary mermaids is not within me, but I feel like I have to write one so I can enter this. Like, if that's not the story you want to write, and you want to write something really, really fucked up, send it to Janine. She loves that. So it's like, you're going to find the people that like what you like. And if that's what you like, honestly, write that, film that. The people that love that will find you. And to Ash's point, if you like something, you're going to tell somebody you like that. I mean, that's we're in an industry where like word of mouth is everything. I love that movie. You got to watch it. Oh, they had this really great article. You got to read it. Oh, this story kicked ass. You got to watch it. Oh, this film fest is fucking amazing. You got to go. Like, it's just, being true to yourself feels really fucking scary if you don't know anybody in the industry or you don't know anybody in this genre. But you're in the long run, it's better off literally being as genuine, as authentic as you can possibly be, because it really, really sucks trying to keep up a pretense around this genre. Because I feel like you can definitely figure out who is in it to be adjacent and who is a really big fan and doing what they love. So just kind of do what you love, and those folks will find you.
I would say networking is really important. And obviously, as a woman, as has been said before, supporting your fellow women of horror is a really big thing. But don't be afraid to reach out to people. You might be a first-time person looking for something, and maybe you want to reach out to Stephen King or a really big director or something like that. Chances are they're probably never going to get back to you, but what if they do? You haven't lost anything in trying to make that connection. And I've got a lot of connections with people within this industry because of that, just from reaching out and being like, hi, and again being like genuine and honest and positive, and being like, I would really love to interview you for something if possible. I know you're incredibly busy, but can we talk sometime? The worst they're going to say is no, I don't want anything to do with you, or you're just never going to hear back. And you haven't lost anything from doing that, but you just never know. Personally, if I hadn't have reached out to Neil Marshall one day, I wouldn't be writing a story about the making of Dog Soldiers and hopefully loads more stuff with him. He is like one of my idols, and I just thought, fuck it, if he might never ever respond to me, or what have I lost? And thankfully I made that sort of step, and here I am doing stuff with it. But I would say that try and reach out to people if you can, because you never know. And a lot of people within horror, Barbara Crampton, for example, huge horror icon, she loves supporting other people within indie horror, and she will do anything she can to try and help. And if she can't do something, she'll say, oh, Kelly Maroney might be able to do something for you and whatnot. There are so many people out there who are willing to help if you just put yourself out there.
Yeah, Barbara Crampton is a queen. She wanted to come along today, but she's hiking with her family. So I was I don't know if anyone else has got any advice. If not,
I just wanted to echo something that Alex said, is that sometimes when you hit enough doors, or you're not getting invited to the table, like, create your own table. And it's not easy. It's never easy. It's can be easier for some than others, but it's if something that you want to exist in the world doesn't already exist, then you are capable of doing it and creating it. And like Mo said, that if it's something that you're passionate about, there are other people who are also passionate about it, and they will find you, and you will find them by just being present and doing it. So and it can be really scary, and again, it's really difficult to do something on your own, but find other people who have done things on their own, because they tend to be the most they've taken the arrows, and I mean, they've failed, they've gone through a lot of shit and come out on the other side. And in my experience, they tend to be more willing to share because they've been there. And so just build your own table and, support each other.
I have to say, I'm coming out of this feeling really inspired by all of you. Like, it's been so nice just talking to everybody who's got a different story today.
Women, hooray!
It's been amazing, and I think I guess that, like you said, Danny, I feel very, very inspired too. And I think for me, my kind of advice is it echoes what everyone has said here, is like connection, building your own tables, doing all of those things. I think that's so important. And I think if you're not connecting with people, if you're not just reaching out, you're never going to meet those people. All of you are, to me, like big inspirations, and I was like, fuck it, let's see if we can all get together and hang out. And before this, I said to my partner, I was like, I'm so excited. I was like, I'm talking to people that mean so much to me. So I think I think it's just amazing that we can, use a platform like, Twitter or Instagram or Facebook to connect with one another and be able to, bolster each other's voices and create this community. So I guess on that note, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining me today. This has been phenomenal. I wish we could talk forever, but here in the UK, the sun is still shining. It's still a gorgeous day. So if it's nice where you are. I appreciate not everyone is in the UK, so I don't know how it is in the other parts of the world, but I want you to go and enjoy the rest of your days. But quickly before we go, I just want to go around everyone and please let everyone watching know where they can follow you, what you've got coming up, and plug away. So Danny, over to you.
Okay, so to find any of my stuff, I'm just going to send you to my website, because all of the links to all of my social media are on there. So it's danny-thompson.com. Coming up, I've recently actually just directed my first piece last weekend. So I've just seen a first edit assemble of that, and it's looking really good. And that's part of an anthology called Horoscopes, run by a company called Myco Entertainment. And the guy's called MJ Dixon, and he's been incredible. And he basically asked 12 people to direct a piece and gave us all a star sign to work with. And I was like, but I'm not a director. And he's like, but it's about time you were. And he was really like positive into kind of saying, you've done enough now to like actually take that step. And if you need any help, I'm here. But he just had faith in me. So that was amazing. So that's kind of the next thing I'm finishing. And I'm writing another feature film at the moment as well. So that's my job for next week, to get back on with that.
Congratulations, Danny. Sounds like someone has been very busy. And horror-themed horoscopes. I love horoscopes, so that I'm like very.
I've got Gemini, so there's twins involved.
Oh, one.
Wait.
Janine?
Okay, the best place to find me is on Twitter. So I'm at Janine Pipe 28. That's where I'm most active. I like Instagram, but I'm just terrible at taking photos. So all my Instagram posts are just like blurred images of things. So Twitter's the best. At the moment, busy plugging Slasher, as I said, which is the new anthology from Candisha Press. And then the next thing that will be out for me will be Sausages, the making of dog soldiers, which should be out in May to coincide with the 20th anniversary. And that's out from the worst named press, in my opinion, Mark, if you're listening, which is Encyclopocalypse, which is on my t-shirt. And I'm only joking because they're absolutely amazing. I just cannot say the name, and I can't spell it either, but they do a lot of movie tie-ins and novelizations and that kind of thing. So putting something out with them has been a dream come true as well. So there'll be a lot of dog soldiers and Neil Marshall stuff from me over the next few months.
I'm very excited about the Dog Soldiers book. Yeah, there's a lot of Dog Soldiers things going on, but we'll save it all because it's too exciting. Alex, what about you?
Faculty of Horror podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, so give it a search. I've been fortunate enough to work on some really cool projects, some of which haven't been announced, but I try to keep up to date with all that stuff at alexandrawest.ca. And the most recent one that was announced was a commentary I did for the Fractured Visions release of Bruno Dumont's 29 Palms, which is the most upsetting film I've ever seen. And the producer who I worked with in the UK said it was a very fun commentary. So that's how I deal with things.
I'm so excited. I'm pretty sure I tagged everyone I knew in your post about 29 Palms. Yes, I'm very excited about that, to say the least. So I'm really looking forward to that. Mo?
Yeah. So as an author, I'm still plugging away at releasing my anthology. I just completed my novella, pitching that out. I'm starting a fiction book called Rock Candy, which is about a slew of teen murders in the 80s in Rockland County, New York. So it's very 16 Candles meets murder, which is really fun. But also I'm working on my nonfiction book. I'm a lecturer. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist with a concentration on emotional reactivity to trauma. So I'm writing that correlating with character archetypes seen in horror movies. So that's my nonfiction that I'm working on right now. We just opened submissions for our 13 Minutes of Horror Film Fest through Nick's Horror Collective. So our theme this year is sci-fi horror. So that's wicked exciting. And then in the fall, I'll be touring a few film campuses around the United States with my course, writing trauma respectively for screen. So that's kind of exciting and really, really terrifying at the same time, because I'm fun and aloof, but I also have to be an academic. So that's what I'm working on. But also, I have a podcast called Between the Banisters. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's all about the movie that shaped you from a child and how you correlate that into an adult. And I would love to have every single one of you on, because I think we talked about a lot of really important movies and I really want to talk about it. But just to my point really quickly, so I don't take up too much time, Zoe, thank you so much for putting this together. It's been really, really amazing for me to experience a lot of people that I haven't had access to. I've literally been fangirling over Kay for years, so I don't know if you know that. It's very awkward right now. And just the amazing things she's put together for Salem Film Fest Film Horror Fest has been amazing. But just having access to just new creatives in horror and new women in horror, to have that access right now for me is amazing, and to learn about other people's journeys is amazing. So I just wanted to say to Zoe, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to experience that today. So
my pleasure. It's me that I came on here, so thank you for joining, Mo. What about you, Ash?
You can find me at Ash Millman on Instagram and Twitter. I work for PlayStation Access, which is a YouTube channel, which you can go and check out. We've just launched a new podcast on video games, which I'm really excited about. I'm hosting that. So yeah, for video game stuff, PlayStation Access. I also do like horror game breakdowns, previews, that sort of thing on PlayStation Access as well. So go there if you want me. Otherwise, in Instagram and Twitter. And I'm also a head, the talking head for mental health and horror that's coming up from Jonathan Barkin, which I'm really excited about and really excited to see this documentary that's coming up. So please go and have a little look at that as well.
Yes, I am in that one as well, and I think you recorded the day before me, because I was like, I'm in the same room that Ash was in. Woo!
Hell yeah,
what about you, Kay?
I again want to echo what Mo said and thank you for inviting us all. And as a trans woman, I just want to say that it's been really special for me to be invited to things like this. And so if you're out there and you're doing stuff like this, like, please know that just inviting trans women to be part of these conversations is feels really good. So, and people can find me on Twitter. It's Video Coven. Salem Horror Fest is going to return in 2023, and I'll have dates to announce next month.
Amazing. I think to find a way to come to Salem Horror Festival. That's what I'm going to work on this year. And then finally, lastly but not least, Billy, what about yourself?
Yeah, so you can find me, my primary kind of base is at Video Nasty Presents on Instagram, because that's kind of the thing that kicked it all off. You can find me at the unfortunately named The Nasty Presents on Twitter, because Twitter's character limit is terrible. And videonastypresents.com is the newly launched website, where hopefully I will be launching a lot more content and collaborative efforts. If anyone is interested, please give me a shout, because the whole basis of Video Nasty is to appreciate and uplift and celebrate creatives and creators and all things kind of weird and wonderful. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And again, as the guy said, Zoe, thank you so much for organizing this, and very happy birthday to Ghouls Mag. Woo!
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I will make sure that we've got links and notes and everything, so that anyone watching can follow everyone that has been here today. And yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Anyone watching, come back at 7:30 p.m. We have a quiz with prizes. So yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys, thank you.
Thank you.